Hi, Elaine. I'm just sending them the live stream link.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, I think I'm not the most tech savvy person in the world, and I have put a lot more faith in myself than I likely should have.
Well, clearly I'm not either, so you're in good company here. So
Okay, cool. In which case, I'm just going to record this to the cloud. Okay, and then are you all ready for me to let them in?
That's fine.
A little confusing because
Hi everyone, can you please mute yourselves as you come in?
Oh, you're not mute.
no, that was went off in
They're recording me. That's so weird.
Okay, Kathy.
Okay, hello everyone. As you all know, I am Reagan. I'm the Vice President of Finance for the Arizona Panhellenic Association. And today we have our fall finance workshop presented by the absolutely amazing Elaine Kohler and Lacey, if she can come in later. These two women work for Koch Industries. It's the largest privately owned company in the United States. And she's going to talk to you a bit about personal finance and budgeting going into the real world. And then we will have an area for questions at the end. So Elaine, if you want to take it away and introduce yourself a bit more, that'd be great.
I'm interested in this Zoom.
Okay.
What's it about? You're going to tell me how to do my task.
I think there might still be some that are not on mute, so if everyone would take a minute and hit their mute button, we'll get started. All right, thank you, Reagan, very much. This is an honor to join you ladies this evening. You will quickly find out I'm by no means a professional presenter, but we're going to just have a nice conversation this evening, and hopefully, even though the Arizona Cardinals are playing football tonight and you probably have some distractions that you'd like to be watching, otherwise we'll take a few minutes this evening, and this is really just meant to be a casual conversation, like we're having a cup of coffee, a glass of tea, a cup of tea, or a glass of wine maybe. So just a little bit about my background before we get started. I have a bachelor's degree in accounting and a master's in business administration. I worked for 16 years in public accounting as a tax preparer, and I've now been at Koch Industries, as Reagan indicated, for 18 years. I've held a number of different positions at Koch Industries, starting as a tax analyst, moved into a tax manager. I led the accounting and tax group for a while, and as a controller. And my current position for about the last 8 years is director of tax.
Okay, let's go to dinner.
A group that we call shareholder support. So clearly, I've not been a college student for quite a number of years, but I will share that my daughter is in her final third year of law school at the University of Tulsa, and enjoyed 4 years of sorority life and during her undergraduate years. And so I'll probably use her as an example and some of her girlfriends. We won't tell them about that, but I do think that it's helpful to connect to some of the issues that age of young ladies are dealing with. So anyway, so we're going to get started. And then, as Reagan said, we'll have some time for questions at the end. So welcome. All right. The first thing I want to say is just maybe a word of encouragement, and this is going to sound exactly like a mother to you, but I just encourage all of you, regardless of where you're at in this journey, whether you're just starting your collegiate years or about to wrap up to truly enjoy the journey. You're embarking on some very exciting times, and the last thing you want to do is rush through it and miss it. And so I just encourage you to savor the season that you're in so that each part becomes a nice memory for you. Okay, so we wanted to talk this evening just a little bit about all things income taxes. So we're going to talk a little bit about how this works and what you should be on the lookout for. I wanted to talk just a little bit about some just general budgeting items, what's coming in, what's going out, things that you might be thinking about as you step into adulthood. And then lastly, we want to finish up with just, some words of advice, if nothing else, about just what you can be doing with regard to your career and advancing it and obtaining, the highest level that you desire. And just, again, those are going to be words of advice more than anything else. So, all right. So for 2021, this is just a baseline. If you have total earned income of greater than $12,550, you are required to file a federal income tax return. And this assumes that you are not claimed as a dependent on your parents' tax return, that you are providing over half of your own support. Earned income is from a job, as it states. That's the primary definition there. If you are still being claimed as a dependent on your parents' return, the threshold is much lower, and you would want to research that. I would say that states are different, so it's always good to ask. We ran into an issue just this year with my daughter in that she had not had enough earned income to file a federal return, but with her attending school in Oklahoma, there was a much lower threshold for Oklahoma, and so she was required to file an Oklahoma return. So just make sure to think about both federal and state side of things. The income tax returns for 2021 will be due by April 15th, 2022. That's the big filing deadline. Now, in the last couple of years, because of COVID, they've modified those a little bit, but indications are that will be the standard due date again for the 2021. And just other things to keep in mind as you are looking at a full year 2021 income tax return. There are some deductions and credits that might be available, just things to poke around on. One of them is the student loan interest deduction, and then there are a variety of education credits. I would say that a lot of people use TurboTax or one of the online portals or software systems, and those I have found are really good at asking a lot of questions. They almost help you know what you need to do. So I think there's a lot of guidance out there that is very helpful as you know which pieces pertain to you and which pieces don't. Okay. So one of the things that I think is important is to, when you embark upon that first new job, and congratulations, you're hired and you're thrilled to death with this annual salary that they've offered you. So for my example purposes here, just to make the math work easy, I started with an annual salary of $60,000 a year. And so I'm going to get paid on the monthly basis. So that's $5,000 per month. And I'm thinking this is going to be great for my bank account, and I'm excited to go. But then I think, oh, I hear there are some deductions that come off of this gross income. So I am going to have to think about those. So it largely are income taxes, and then there are some benefits. And I'm going to share a little story. I should change the names to, protect their anonymity, but one of my daughter's very, very good friends who grew up together since they were 3 years old. She finished her college degree. She was a teacher, interviewed very well, got the job, excited as all get out. They had offered her, a base salary. The first check that she received, she called her mother in a panic, and she said, "Mother, they've made a huge mistake. This check cannot be right." Well, she quickly learned about income taxes and things that come out of your payroll. So the first piece of taxes that come out from payroll on a salary are Social Security and Medicare. So President Franklin D. Roosevelt, he signed this clear into law back in 1935. And this is calculated as a flat percentage of your gross pay. There are some limits in there. The other part of taxes are federal and state income taxes. And the amount that is withheld from your check is based on a federal IRS form W-4 that you complete and give to your employer. And it states how many exemptions you want to claim for the filing of your income tax. And a hint here is they have a nice worksheet that you can go through that leads you, to the number that needs to be claimed. But just in general, keep in mind that the higher the number of exemptions that you claim, the less tax that would be withheld. And, you can hear horror stories about you go through the whole year and you want every dime in your paycheck, but at the end of the year, when you file your tax return, then you find you haven't withheld enough taxes and you have a big tax bill at the end. So this is a good time to, really go through that exercise, read through that form, ask questions if you have, and make sure you're on track with those things. Okay, so for my numbers people out there, I couldn't, do this without actually putting some numbers on a piece of paper. So I just wanted to do a real quick comparison of gross pay to net pay and let you look at how that can be impacted. So we started with our gross monthly pay of $5,000, and then we have the Social Security taxes, the Medicare taxes, the federal income taxes, state income taxes, and then some different benefits. And once you subtract all of those items, that's where you land for your net pay. So in my example, now these aren't precise numbers, they're just somewhat placeholders, but Social Security is 6.2% of your gross, Medicare taxes, 1.45%. That's Social Security and Medicare taxes are going into the federal fund that help to pay for, our senior citizens and their monthly benefit and assistance with medical care. And then you have federal income taxes that can vary. I just used 12% as a placeholder. And then state income tax is the same. And then I put a placeholder in for benefits, which we'll talk about a little bit there. But you can see the difference between the 5,000 gross and what you would actually net pay would be, around the 3,670. So a good thing to remember so that this will help when we talk about the budgeting a little bit later in the presentation. And then I wanted to just talk a little bit about some the examples of the benefits. Things that would be withheld from your paycheck would be health insurance premiums, life insurance, disability. There's professional memberships and dues, and retirement contributions. And I would just always encourage you to take advantage of any employer provided benefits. That's at no cost to you. For example, at our company that we have, every employee gets a certain amount of life insurance that's paid on your behalf. It's no cost to anyone, but it's a benefit that you want to make sure you take care of and take advantage of. And I think too, it's also important to think about, I know, it's an individual decision on a lot of these benefits, especially when it comes to things like health insurance. Do you want a low deductible that covers a lot, but the premium is actually higher? Or do you want a lower premium that, might result in a little bit more being out of pocket that you would actually have to pay? So again, a lot of things to think about as you're signing up for benefits when you're going to work in that first full-time job. Also wanted to mention retirement. I think that it's really hard to think that that's important right now as you're starting out in your career and just getting going, but I would strongly recommend that or my advice would be that it's never too early to start with that, because that money is going to grow and grow and grow. And a lot of the plans are tax deferred, which means you're not going to pay tax on that is put aside for you now in retirement. It's going to grow. It's going to be put aside in your retirement account and grow with the earnings until you take it out when you're 65, 70 years old. to use for living expenses, and you get all the benefit of that tax deferred money. The other great thing about when you're working full time is to remember that a lot of companies have an employer match. Like for instance, some companies will say they will match your retirement contribution up to a certain percentage. So for instance, 6%, let's say. If I put in 6% of my own money into the retirement account, my employer is going to match that 6%. Now, if I put in 10%, they're still just going to match the 6%. If I put in 2%, they're going to match 2%. So I would always encourage you to start and, zone in on that amount that they're going to match, so that, again, it's free money to you that you will benefit from as in the future during retirement. And then lastly, it's just the principle of time value of money. You put that money in now and it's going to be invested and it's going to be earning, and you just can never make up for that benefit of putting that money in earlier rather than later. So be sure to take advantage of any employer sponsored retirement accounts. And there's other options too, such as an individual retirement account and things like that. Some of the simplest things are though through your employer. Okay, that's what I had for on the income tax side of things. And so wanted to just have this one slide with regard to a little bit about budgets. You might remember back in the earlier slide, we talked about net pay. And at the end of the day, it really depends on just the money coming in and the money going out. That's all a budget really is. So you want to make sure you're starting with the right amount, that it's truly coming in after your taxes are paid. And that's the amount, hitting your bank account. I think it's important to know too that, this is a steady progression for you. What your starting salary is not going to be what you're making in 5 years or 10 years. And you just want to be able to, it's somewhat of a stair step up and take advantage of those life changes and start out at the right level and then move as it comes up. One thing that my daughter and I have been talking a lot about is as she gets ready to finish school is there's a lot of questions to ask at this time. What are essential things that have to be paid versus things that are just nice to have? And a couple of the examples that we've talked about is, does she really need the gym membership that's, $159? Or could she just use the gym there in her apartment complex? Things like that, depending on what's important to you, those are good ways to help with your budget and distinguish between what's essential, you have to pay your utilities versus what are just nice to have things, whether it be eating out or, the best package of cable or whatever it might be. The other thing too, for our, new young adults entering the workforce, and I've seen this with my daughter too, is those credit card companies are out there. They're like, we're going to get you before someone else gets you, but just be careful of those. I think that's an area to be really wary of, if you will. And just, there's a lot of good reasons to have a credit card for, renting a car or anything like that, but it's a slippery slope and you can quickly get, upside down where you really don't want to be. So resist that temptation to get too many of those. And they'll be hitting your mail if they already have not. I would also really think it's important to establish an emergency fund, when you need new tires on the car or the brakes go out, something like that. It's always good to not have to panic about that and think, how am I going to pay for that? And get the cash to do that so that you have a little bit of an emergency fund that you can rely on. And I would just encourage you to do a little bit of new kind of homework, not the kind you're used to now, but there's a lot of really good books and podcasts out about budgeting and just what to look out for. Dave Ramsey and his daughter, Rachel Cruz, have a lot of good programs and some that are very specific to young adults. And I'm sure there's a lot of other ones, but those are just some that I'm aware of. So that's a little bit about a budget. Okay. I know that Reagan had mentioned that, there was a little bit of interest in kind of understanding both Lacey and I don't know that she's been able to join, but our career path. And sometimes, there's different professions where it's more male dominated, and others where you see a strong female presence. And I'll speak from my history through public accounting into where I'm at Koch Industries. I did see this quite a bit in public accounting. Granted, I haven't been in public accounting for 18 years, but I did see very few women who were advancing, up to partner level. And it was for a variety of reasons, whether it was family or, that they just didn't encourage it and didn't support it. In contrast, I'm really grateful for the company that I work for and very honored to be a part of it. And I frankly feel like they do a really good job at helping to develop all employees, regardless of gender. And Lacey and I were talking the other day that we're on phone calls regularly with outside counsel from, law firms all over the country. And frequently we're the only women on the call. So it's eye-opening. It certainly is. So I think that it's something that varies very much could be by profession or by firm. Before Lacey joined Koch Industries, she was in private practice with the law firm, and she saw a lot of those problems too, where women just really weren't given a seat at the table and able to advance and certainly even be compensated the same as men. And I think we're making a lot of progress, but we have a long ways to go. So that's, I think, where ladies such as you all can really help to advance this and keep the momentum headed in the right direction. So just a few of my little tips. I live here in the Midwest, and I think all of you clearly, just because of where you're at today, have a strong work ethic and, not afraid to put the hours and the work in to get the job done. So I would say that applies in your career as well. And don't hesitate to raise your hand. My example of this when I was in public accounting was there were areas of tax where people just really ran from. They did not want to, do trust taxation or nonprofit taxation or something like that. And so I found that in those areas, it was an opportunity more than anything else, an opportunity to learn some new knowledge and gain some expertise in it. And then you became even the subject matter expert on that. And you were the go-to person because you went into that maybe not such a glamorous area. And those things, even in public accounting, have benefited me as I've been at Koch Industries. The other thing here, this is a given regardless of what profession you're in, is just to always, put time in to build the relationships. Find a good mentor. Eventually you will, I'm certainly sure, be a good mentor to others and build those relationships and avoid the drama. There's just, it's a waste of energy, a waste of time, and you're going to need that for yourself. So don't get pulled into that. I think it's important to be, you are your best advocate, and to really believe in yourself and invest in yourself, to be confident and humble at the same time. I would say that, keep sharpening your skills and making yourself better, learning new skills and areas of expertise, and to not shy away from, participating in discussions or offering up to, join a task force or a special project or something like that, but to always be humble that there's always better ways to do things, that people are always going to have other suggestions on what to do, and it's all a continual learning experience. So let's see. So those are just some of my maybe words of wisdom that I would say have been very helpful for me. Like I said, I feel very fortunate to have had this career thus far, and I think a lot of it has to do with the company that I work for and just the trajectory that we're seeing within society is making sure that women are just as equipped as any other to be leaders and to do an outstanding job in a lot of these. So that's what I had. Reagan, is there anything else? I think we'll just go to comments and questions.
Yeah, that sounds great. Everybody feel free to send them in the chat. I will keep a lookout on the live stream link for any questions there. And so anybody that's watching the live stream, if you want to comment them, I will send them in the chat, or I'll unmute myself and ask Lynn myself.
Okay.
Oh, there's a question in the chat. So how do you recommend getting ahead on savings for retirement when what's waiting for you after college is grad school and not a job?
Yes, and that's a very good question. I would say, to tackle the first thing out of the gate that you have to. And to be honest with you, if you're ready to advance to graduate school or some other level of professional training, be a law school or something like that, I don't know that I would worry too much about retirement, to be honest with you. That time will come, and I would never, I don't think there's any reason to just bring up on additional stress on yourself, if you will. That advanced degree is going to benefit you incredibly well with your compensation package going forward. So that should be your focus. And then as soon as you have kind of journeyed through that season, then start thinking about the more longer term retirement type of things. But don't take on too much at one time. Tackle what's in front of you in the short term. I know I kept telling my daughter, you just have to get through these 3 years of law school. Think about like this time next year, you'll be done with it. So one step at a time.
Great. And then I have a question from another viewer. What's one thing you wish you knew about finances when you were younger, knowing everything you know now?
That's one thing I wished I would have known. I think I probably should have taken some of my own advice and been more strategic about gradually working your way up. That's really hard, I think, in that, you come, out of college and you look to your left and you see your parents and maybe your older siblings and how successful they are. They have a nice home and cars and things like that. And I think it's hard to think that they too had to steadily work in and up to that level. And sometimes you can, get in over your head and then it's hard to dig yourself out. So I think just understanding that, they too had to start somewhere in order to get to the level that they were at. So I wish I would have been a little bit better at that and just been content with where I was and focused on steadily, picking the pace up as it was appropriate.
Awesome. And then I'm looking at the live stream. How much do you think, in terms of obviously not jobs that require postgraduate, like masters or PhDs, but how much do you think particular majors matters in terms of jobs, or how do you think you can use any given major as a strength when kind of negotiating finances and salaries?
I think a college degree goes a long ways. And I'll be honest that I think that even at our company, clearly there's, jobs that require a certain degree, but we have people working within like even our legal group that have a communications degree. And so it really has to do more with, just their character, their work ethic, the fact that they align with our guiding principles. And so I think it's important. I think it can be, but it's not the determining factor with a lot of companies. At least it hasn't been with us. I don't know if they look real. Again, there's some certifications and licensures and things like that jobs require, but others, you can really get your foot in the door and and start out with a good solid base level college degree.
Awesome. And then in the chat, what is one piece of advice you have for women entering male-dominated fields?
You're an equal. Hold your head up high, shoulders back, listen, learn, read the room, do everything that everybody expects to be done. Be different. Don't be afraid to stand out a little bit, participate in the conversation, ask to be included. And I think those are just little things that you can do on the daily that over time really accumulate into, being a key contributor.
Amazing. And then my personal question, obviously, in terms of interviewing, I know that a lot of companies or employers won't give you a salary range or like really fill you in, especially as you're coming out of college, because you're kind of, lower on the totem pole. So how do you think we can either educate ourselves and learn how to negotiate in those interviews, or be able to understand like what our job is actually, or what like our future labor or skills are actually worth?
No, that's a good question. And I think there's a lot, I think it's important. And I know this is something that even our, company, we're headquartered here in Kansas. And so, the job market can be very different here in Kansas than the East Coast or the West Coast, and cost of living and things like that. And while we have, offices and plants and whatnot all over the country, I think it's important to connect yourself to what market rate is. And I know some companies, a lot of the pay is what we call discretionary. So there's a lot of incentive compensation, based on your performance for the year. There's a lot of other options that would quickly add to your base salary. So, sometimes your base salary is not the full package. You need to think about the benefit package that they're offering you too. For example, some companies will pay all of your health insurance. Other companies will pay only half of the premium, or maybe they won't pay any of it, and that's going to be all out of pocket for yourself. So I think it's important to think about those things that maybe you don't necessarily see in your paycheck every week, but those are benefits that, you're not having to pay those out of pocket. But I think a good question to always ask is, once you're kind of connected to the market and you feel like you've, and that's just online tools and, things like that. And maybe even recruiters would help you with that. I think it's important to understand what the performance review process is. Koch Industries is outstanding at the performance review. It's everybody goes through one once a year. While there's live feedback on your performance throughout the year, this is a once a year time when, it's a peer review and you get a lot of feedback from people you work with and for. And I think but then you hear about companies that, they worked there 3 or 4 or 5 years and never had performance review. And so I think a good question to ask when you're going through the interview process is, what is your performance review process? Because that is if they have a solid one and it's on, a regular basis, that's a perfect platform to talk about compensation at that time. And, then you'll have time under your belt where you can, list out all of your contributions, your strengths, your areas of development, where you want to go. All of those things will feed into making sure that you're fairly compensated within the company.
Great, thank you. And then from the live stream, more of a budgeting question. Do you have any advice for people that have like uncontrollable spending habits?
Yeah, like Amazon and stuff like that. I know. Boy, I tell you, I think it's just a bit of it is our personality. People are going to have addictive personalities to different things. It doesn't matter if it's food or, they like to gamble or shop or shoes or, handbags, whatever it might be, cosmetics. And I think it's a discipline thing. I'll be honest with you. And it's painful, and you don't want to go through something painful, but it really does pay off. And I think there's a lot, again, I lean heavily on podcasts and books, and, even talking to someone, a therapist or something like that, that could help you set some boundaries for yourself and really, put up some guardrails. Anything like that too. I think it's good to have an accountability partner, someone who you can, when you're ready to go on a little bit of a spending spree, you can call them up and say, I need some help. Let's just go have a cup of coffee instead. And so, but it does take a lot of discipline, and it's painful, but it's well worth it. And you'll be so glad if you, invest the time and effort now to get on track.
Awesome. Thank you. And does anybody have any last questions or more questions? It doesn't look like it. So Elaine, if you want to give any last piece of advice or overarching conclusion, and then we can do attendance.
Yes. Well, again, thank you very much for letting me share tonight. I hope it was a little bit helpful. And I would just say that I'm a big fan of young ladies coming out into the workforce. I couldn't be more proud of my daughter, who is finishing up law school, and just the ladies that I'm able to work with in my job, and the younger ones coming up. It's very encouraging. It's very exciting. Regardless of the area of your study or of your profession, you clearly are all overachievers, high performers, and don't let that stop. Just keep the momentum going, and, enjoy the journey and the season that you're in, and it'll be worth it all.
That's great. Thank you so much. And then if you want to click to the last slide, I believe.
Yeah.
And for everyone that's in attendance, it obviously should work on the live stream as well. This is the QR code for attendance, and then I will send it to your chapters after.
Oh, did I go too fast?
Maybe sometimes the
yeah. Sorry.
file. No, don't worry about it. And then as everybody else is doing their attendance, I actually have a question just for you personally of like, how did you find your passion, whether it be in finance or anything else, just for some of the younger members here that could still be looking?
I actually had it really lucky. I think I was fortunate. I'll be honest. I have so many, whether it be nieces and nephews or, just friends as children, and that man, when you're 18, it's kind of hard to expect us to know what we want to do with the rest of our life. I've had nephews that really just kind of waffled around, and eventually they find something, but that's a hard age to expect someone to commit to, this is exactly what I want to be. Some people will, I think. And for me, like I said, I think I was pretty fortunate. I as a sophomore in high school, I took a general bookkeeping class. And I mean, it was back before computers and everything, I'll be honest with you. And I did have probably a strength in math that easily pulled into that. And so for me, the accounting path was just a given. Now, I will have to admit, and I don't tell a lot of people this, but I really struggled with cost accounting. And during that class, my sophomore year of college, I thought about changing my major because I thought I'm not going to survive this cost accounting class, but I made it. So I think just, talking to people is helpful, people that are a little bit ahead of you and getting some ideas. I think it's important to keep abreast of what are some, professions that are really going to be hot in the years to come, especially if you don't really know exactly where you're at right now. Do some just kind of general canvassing of what's out there and where, our society sees, top jobs that there's going to be a need for. And that'll help you kind of, I think, land somewhere where you have a passion, and it'll reveal itself and kind of rise to the surface.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Well, I know I appreciate you coming here. I've talked as as my Panhellenic board with our president and the rest of our vice presidents, and with a lot of the finance representatives that I oversee and just the general women in the community. And you are someone that we see as kind of one of the epitomes of a strong, powerful woman. And so we really appreciate you coming out here, and we're just so honored that you took the time out to come and give this presentation and answer the questions that we had.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Reagan, and appreciate the invitation. And it was my pleasure and my honor to spend a little time with you.
And then from, Molly's going to kill me that I'm saying this online. From the Panhellenic president is texting me to tell you that she loves you.
Oh, well, thank you. I can use all the fans I need. So we've enjoyed getting ready for this, and again, as you can tell, I'm not a professional at this, and hope it was just a casual conversation. But if there's a little bit of a nugget in there or a tidbit that helps you, then we've made some progress.
Amazing. Well, to everyone that's on the Zoom and on the live stream, I hope you guys all have an amazing night. And then Elaine, I hope you as well have an amazing night and a safe rest of the year, and enjoy everybody as Thanksgiving is coming up. So everybody have a good night, and Elaine, I'll email you with everything.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks again.
Thanks so much. Bye, guys.